has a really strong sense of humor, and that's why he would put me in this position. But I'm happy to say that we are moving forward with the establishment of the republic. This is so important and so fundamental and so in our face. This corporate government is a total sham. The government, the medicine, the whole corporate system, the food, everything, the media, everything is a lie in your face. And the republic is the answer. I'm involved with my local republic in Mojave County, and we're trying to I can't say re-inhabit because Arizona only started in 1912. But I don't want to speak too long. I just want to say briefly that the white hats have told people of the republic that when we have a certain amount of people involved in this endeavor, we will go forward into GESARA elections, which is 120-day elections. The republic will have a kind of legal autonomy, a legal authenticity to enable the military to conduct these elections that will elect a government which, according to GESARA, will be 10% of the size it is now. So this is if a lot there are a lot of people out there in the digital world that they're disgusted and they don't know why they can't see the executions. We all know the executions are going on, that been going on for years, and that the military's in control. If you don't believe, my friend, what's the guy with the big cowboy hat? Um, anyway, it's all happening. So I'm going to let my friends now take over, and they will explain in more detail what's really going on now. But the bottom line is, and let me just before we start, let me just put out the communication link that you can join, that anyone can join, and anyone should join the Republic as soon as you can. Volunteer for the republic, volunteer to take an office if your state needs offices. But it is this republic which will take a position of power for the 120 days in order to enable authentic legal elections to elect a real government, not a phony government. The old government is it, people. I see people online. They're like, "How can we deal with this?" You're not going to have to. But the answer, the antidote to all this, is to take the action of joining the republic. Clean and simple. Just join the republic. When enough people join the republic, the white hats have said they're going to step in, and we're going to have elections. So I think that's all I really want to share. But I'm going to give it over to Bill, my friend Bill, and he will further elaborate on how this is going down. I'm gonna leave the republicforusa.org down below. Please, if you haven't joined, and if you're complaining about not being able to do anything, you will now have an opportunity to take part. It this this transformation of power must be done by us. President Trump is doing a magnificent job in neutralizing the deep state, this criminal organization that's been running the world. But in order for everything to move into the Great Awakening, into the New World, into the Golden Age, we have to become sovereign. This is an essential piece of the puzzle. So if you're sitting there, if you're complaining, if you're frustrated, if you're unhappy, join the Republic and get involved.
Well, thank you very much, Ellie, for that exquisite introduction and information that you provide the listening audience that's out there today. We've got two folks here today that are joining us, Ellie. One is Governor Carpenter, the governor for the Free State of Colorado. And then we have Jean Hertler, who you can see their books in the background there. She and her husband were responsible for putting the books together, doing the research, all the education, and putting this series of books together to give us as a gift of knowledge and information, which is a foundation. My background, I came from construction and stuff, and we don't know what we don't know, and the truth of things is often buried throughout time. But if you're ever going to build anything, you first have to look at the land that you're on. You're not going to just build in a swamp, because we don't want to build anything more in a swamp. We want to be on bedrock, and that may be a different level. So a firm foundation is extremely important on anything that you build on. And I like to point out, I think your foundation needs to be with God and Christ, and then everything else works for His purpose. So one thing is I wanted to think about is folks, about the past proves the present. You have to go back in order to come forward. And in this case with the Republic and what transpired in the 1800s, and there's probably links that go even further back in the men manipulating during the days of the creation of the government and the finance stuff, and it goes all the way back with, they never wanted us, this country and our leaders, to be separate from the monarchies in England. And so this is a continual, you got to dig in a lot of different holes to really get at the truth. But you've got a really good start, and a whole lot of it, of foundational rock, granite, with what the Hertlers have provided through their devotion and God's word. And she'll share that with you in a few minutes. But also, so we're all connected. We all have roots. I'd like to introduce and pass it off to Governor Jim Carpenter, the Free State of Colorado, for him to share his root story for everybody to listen. So, Governor, it's yours.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ellie. Appreciate everything you do to be a light to a dark world. Always great to see you, Sister Jean. And once again, we're out here together. My story goes back to, and I'm not going to make this about me. I have a lot of history that I'm still regurgitating, but my history goes back to the common law jury trials, the international courts of common law, that had found even the Pope and the Vatican and the banks and all the people around the world guilty of all these crimes against humanity, and yet they had no teeth. And it was a few years later than that um, I heard about a secret meeting in Arizona with a bunch of patriots, and I discovered the Restore America program. And at that time, they told me that they were going to serve all 50 governors of the states by flag officers to rescind their oaths of office and to take a new oath and stand up for a republic. And of course, most didn't do that. Um, and so, by the way the law works, when two people show up or are called to court and one person doesn't show up, well, the one that shows up gets the prize. And such as this. So this gave us our lawful stature then when that failed in their jurisdiction to go out and stand up the states again. And I was privy to be part of this conversation in the background and watch all this develop. Meanwhile, in my journey, I ran into a gentleman who was part of the class action suits by the farmers led by retired General Royce Wessinger that brought forth the court ruling that the people were hoodwinked by uh, the Federal Land Bank Association. And therein stems Willie Nelson's Farm Aid concerts for aid for those displaced farmers. And that's where our new thought proceeds towards NESARA, GESARA, and that changeover with our financial institutions. So it's been quite a ride for an old guy that just wanted to be a hermit and let life go on by like you, Ellie. But along the way, I heard rumors that there was a gal that had felt inspired to write a uh, brief to the courts of heaven. And I thought, that's okay. I'm a Christian man. My dad was an ordained minister. Knew the Word of God real well. Grew up in a staunch Baptist home, and I said, yeah, I got it. That's okay. And let me give you a real quick summation of 15 years. I realized that yes, this is about taking back our country and taking responsibility for what our forefathers gave us, but also it's about that time in prophetic history that events come to pass. And as I've watched and been a part of these events, like Gene, we've witnessed a move of God that gives us very clear certainty as to events forthcoming, such as what's described in many of the prophetic books. And so we as believers of risen Christ, you believer of a Christ yet to come, still have the same law form. And I hope that answers your question, Ellie, that you didn't share earlier. But it's been a privilege to work together with author Gene Hertler. He's been a tremendous servant. And thank you, Gene, for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Governor Carpenter, and thank you, Ellie, for hosting us and inviting us to come along, and also Bill. It's absolutely a privilege. How I came along, we'll just say, if we go back to 2008 and when Mr. Obama was elected, my husband and I were very concerned. And at that time, we couldn't purchase ammo anywhere because it was sold out, and also firearms at that time too. So we knew that we weren't the only ones that were concerned. And then we remember the bank scandal with the mortgage foreclosures. So Bush Jr. Had his hand in that, where they bailed out the banks rather than the American people who were hit hard by the scams. And I remember thinking, the federal government bailed out the banks when they could have bailed out the people, and the banks would have got the money anyhow. But the banks ended up getting the money and the people's houses. They were equity stripped of everything they had in their homes. And we knew it stank. We knew it was wrong. And so it was a December in 2010 when I had gone to my chiropractor, and he was all excited. He had chiropractor 20 years, and he said, America's being restored. And he babbled on about a number of things. I couldn't quite follow him, but he wrote down a website. And when I got home, David was cleaning the snow off the driveway pad, and I hollered up, hey, America's being restored. And he said, what does that mean? And I spent all of the weekend researching to see what I could find. And it was about a month later we did join because we wanted to see America restored. And about a month later, we figured out the gentleman that my chiropractor had been to his house the night before was another chiropractor, and who happened to be a senator in the re-inhabited Republic for Wisconsin. And we ended up connecting with him and took he and his wife out for dinner, and he explained the spiritual into it. At that time, he brought up Lindsey William, the Alaskan pipeline chaplain, and also said, look up the allegory for the Wizard of Oz. So I had done that, and the next morning I had printouts on David's seat, so his chair, so he could read about those things. That's all it took for me, was to show me the spiritual in it. And where we were at that time, we were empty nesters, and David was preparing to retire in the spring, and we had plans of, we had just closed on a house in another part of the state, which is where we are now. We were going to do church ministry, and God had other plans. So when we had shared about the Republic being restored with the pastoral couple, they were very cold. You know, church and state, they don't mix real well. They didn't want to hear anything about government. And I just knew that the compelling was so strong inside, I couldn't ignore it. So I knew that that was the route we were going on, and that's what we did. I'll fast forward ahead and say that how did I come to get into this writing thing? Well, a lot of things happened. I would say that I'm a journalist, and I would be on every national conference call, every state conference call that I could. I would listen to every radio program or podcast, and I journal it. So here we are. I have somewhere around 60 journals. I'm in my third tub of stuffing journals for what I wrote down. And there were times even where it was like I couldn't not do it. And I would wonder, is there anything wrong with me that I continue to write everything down? But I see now that was part of that compelling. We'll just fast forward and say that I did have a little background in our Christian heritage in our country that I didn't get in all of my years of education, but I did when I homeschooled my two children, my son for 1 year in 10th grade and my daughter from kindergarten through 3rd grade, and we had a biblical worldview in education. And it was exciting for me. I learned more even just from kindergarten curriculum than I did in all of my years in education, because it was a biblical worldview. It was providential, looking at things, and I saw God in science and God in math. And when I saw God in history, I fell in love with American history at that point. When I was a schoolgirl, I didn't care for history. It was dry, it was boring, it was irrelevant. It was a bunch of dates that didn't mean anything to me. But when I saw that we had a Christian heritage and the foundation, and Bill, I loved your opening, we want to build on the rock, where we're solid, where we're firm. We don't want to build on sinking sand, which is what this corporation government is that we have currently. That wasn't built to last. We want our foundation with the God who gives us liberty, our creator. And it's not religious, it's governmental. So when I came to see, and a lot of this came by revelation through the years, by hanging with it and then doing the research and so forth, it opened up a whole new world to me. And how the writing journey began was in March of 2014. So we go forward a few years, and there's a lot of history in between there. But I want to fast forward to, I was asked by a Republic leader to write a press release. Our president was wanting to reach out to the people and affirm certain things that were going on in the country. And I'll say that I was asked to write. They knew I had a talent for writing, because the year before I had written the Hertler Report. I would cover a couple of national calls, and every week I would put out this piece that was called the Hertler Report. And so this Republic leader called and said, hey, would you write a press release? And it happened to be on the Family Research Council. At that time, in March of 2014, Family Research Council, the president was Tony Perkins, the chairman was former Army Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, and they wrote a letter to then FBI Director James Comey, and then Attorney General Eric Holder. Those names might ring a bell. And exhorted them to take the Southern Poverty Law Center off the FBI website because the DOJ and the FBI had partnered with the Southern Poverty Law Center. And those folks are not good. Those folks are part of, they have a hate map on their website. And on their hate map, they put a lot of Christian organizations, Christian churches, and would cite these organizations and folks for hate, not for crimes, but just because it didn't align with their belief system. And so there was this misguided gentleman that found the Family Research Council on the Southern Poverty Law Center website, and he decided he was going to go into their building and mass kill employees. Well, that day that he walked in there, the guards saw when he walked in, he didn't look quite right. And the guard confronted him. They ended up in a tussle. The guard took a bullet, but he did stop the man. And that was in August of 2012. So now it's, around March when the court hearing goes forward. And the fella stated in court that the reason why he did it is because he found the Family Research Council on the hate map, and he was into sodomy. He was a gay guy, and he was offended because the Family Research Council was listed to be a Christian organization that believes in a one-man, one-woman marriage and believes in the Hebrew and Christian Bible. So that was his premise for going into mass kill. And so our leadership wanted to support Tony Perkins and Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin on their letter on their stance to disassociate, at least on the website, with the FBI. So this is the law enforcement arm of the Department of Justice. Take that off the website. And before I write anything, I like to research it fully to make sure that I know what I'm writing about. And so I ended up spending a whole weekend researching, and what I came across was astounding. I end up witnessing that all of the federal government agencies were weaponized against the American people. And I was even able to pinpoint it back to March and April when they started of 2010, when the Restore America plan did serve notice on the de facto 50 governors to return to our Constitution. And so when I saw this, and I saw that our federal government agencies were weaponized against the American people, I was flabbergasted. And I went back to the Republic leader that asked me to write the press release, and I said, this is bigger than that. And I explained to him what I saw. And he ended up three-weighing in our then acting Secretary of State, Janine Stewart at that time. And he wanted me to explain to her what I uncovered, what I found. And she listened very intently. And then she gave me a writing assignment. She said, Jean, I want you to write down everything you saw. I want you to well document it. And I want you to take your time. And I accepted the assignment, and I said, okay. And I was so overwhelmed with all that I had seen and what I had witnessed. A week had gone by, and I didn't know how to start. And that the initial Republic leader had called to check in on me. And I said, I'm stuck. I don't know how to begin. This is so big. And he said to me, why don't you consider it a legal brief for the courts of heaven? And immediately the inspiration was there. The writing flow was there. I knew how to write legal documents. I was familiar. And a legal brief is really, it's just the history, background history of the case for the judge to bring them up to speed. And so I thought, well, our history, the history of the American Republic, belongs to us, the people. That's ours. It doesn't belong to the skunks in DC. That's ours. And so I began writing American history, going back to the Pilgrims and the Puritans and so forth. And I think I had gotten a little over 100 pages, and somebody had shared my draft with the president. I didn't have a working relationship with him then. I was just a little gal in Wisconsin. I held a state position. But the president had responded back to them and said, would you share this video with Jean and let her know that this is part of our history? And that video had to do with the Jesuits and the Freemasons, so the secret societies and the dark history of America. And I had stumbled across that some years before, so I knew what he was talking about, and where there was, some leadership that said, oh, you don't have to do that, or you don't have to go down that route. I knew that I needed to, and so I began researching out of print material. I came across Civil War generals' books that were taken out of print. They knew who murdered Lincoln, and also firsthand accounts, books that were published by those that did research at that time, like John Dye and Burke McCarty. And I read through all of those books, and I began to interface the dark side of our history with our truthful history. And the writing ended up going for 4 solid years. I worked 12 to 17 hours, virtually 7 days a week. And leadership, I don't recall at what point that was. It might have been the end of 2014 when they began to take sections of my writing in PDF format, and they would publish it on the national website. And my husband David was excited about that. He linked it to like the lady that had written Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe, because she had done the same thing where she wrote her story and then it published in a magazine before it became a book. And what came out of that is our Wisconsin senator, a beautiful former United States Marine, man of integrity, he had downloaded them and printed them and read them, and he excitedly called David and said, the American people need to see this right away. This needs to publish in a book. And he took it upon himself and did it. And David worked with him on that and so forth. So that's what happened. And it was so much material, it ended up printing in 2 volumes. So they're behind me. So we see volume 1 and then volume 2. Volume 1 is America's Truthful History. So that's all of our truthful history with interfaced in there the dark history. Thank you, Bill. Bill's got volume 1 up there, America's Truthful History. And, world history plays into American history. We have to know our world history in order to understand why did the Pilgrims come across in like a paper boat across the Atlantic back in the early 1600s. And then thousands followed them, the Puritans afterwards. Why did they do that? So if we understand the history of why that did that was because of religious persecution and the monarch having control over, the church back then. Well, the Pilgrims wanted to have a pure relationship with the Creator, and they ended up being exiled in Holland for 11 or 12 years before they came to America. And one of those leaders worked in the university in Leyland, Holland, and with Peter Canais was a gentleman that had studied on the Hebrew Republic. And so they understood God's government from the Old Testament Hebrew Republic, and they brought that with them here to America. And as it went, their ship, the Mayflower, ended up going further north than what they were chartered to do with the Virginia colony. So before they got off the ship, they had to write up a governing rules for how they would live in community, because there were more on the ship than just their group of people. And they agreed to it, and that was the Mayflower Compact. And it It had a creator foundation right there. It was a covenant with the creator. And then when the Puritans came over by the thousands, they also had a covenant. It was the model of Christian charity with the divine rights of Jesus Christ. So there was another covenant. And then I discovered that there were many more covenants that germinated forward to the Declaration of Independence, which is also a covenant with the Creator. It's a compact, it's a social compact of the people with the Creator, where he's acknowledged in there 4 times: the supreme judge of the world, the creator of the universe, nature's God, and divine providence. I wasn't taught that in school. So right there was a covenant with the creator, and in it is the law form that they intended to use for the American Republic, the laws of nature and of nature's God. And the founders also studied, there were several, there was William Blackstone, there was John Locke, and they understood what natural law was. They understood the Creator's law, and they reasoned together quite a bit and went forward with that. Well, we need to relearn that. We need to learn, why was that successful? Why was that so beautiful? That's where liberty came from. And I saw in the journey that all government springs from a particular religion. The American Republic sprang from biblical Christianity, which is the religion of liberty. That's where liberty comes from. And we could also think of, look at Sharia law, what that comes from, the Muslim religion, from Islam. So it's not too hard to reason that government does come from religion, and it was well hidden from us. So that's what I wrote on. And then volume 2 was the story of how it came together. Thank you, Bill. He's holding that up. It's the story of the reinhabitation, how it happened. And there are so many profound occurrences that you cannot dismiss, like when the 50 de facto governors were served. Those that were working on that did not know that they were served on the Feast of Passover, which was the Old Testament Exodus out of Egypt. The Creator was involved in that. And we know that the Creator speaks to his people on biblical feast days. That those are very important. Those are statutes and ordinances, the Old Testament tells us. God speaks to his people on those days. So I got excited when I realized that. And when I got into, finally, when I got into the part that would be volume 2, the story of the reinhabitation, and I was transcribing a recording of when there were over 500 that came together on a national conference call, and that was September 23rd, 2010. And they voted in who they wanted to be their officials, their officers, and they did all their necessary things in law for the Congress and so forth. That session was opened by the Republic chaplain, and he had started off by saying that evening happened to be the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. I came out of my chair when I heard him say that, because there was a second witness. Here was another high holy day, and God was speaking. And the chaplain was talking about a nation being reborn. The American Republic was being reborn. And I want to establish, too, that there are 2 governments on this land. This is very, very important for the American people to understand that there indeed are 2 governments on this land, and it was acknowledged by the Supreme Court. In the case of Down versus Bidwell in 1901, it's 182 U.S. 244. So the Supreme Court of the corporate United States, in the decision in Downs versus Bidwell, acknowledges the 2 national parallel governments in existence. And this fact was made clear by Supreme Court Justice Marshall Harlan. And I want to read this. It's a small part. And open your ears to this. The idea prevails with some indeed. It found expression in arguments at the bar that we have in this country substantially or practically two national governments, one to be maintained under the Constitution, that would be de jure or lawful, with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress, that would be de facto, color of law, outside and independently of that instrument, the Constitution, by exercising such powers as other nations of the earth are accustomed to exercise. Wow! We weren't taught that in school. That was hidden from us. And then also in the archives.gov, so the records of government of the District of Columbia, under 351.1, it's right there, administrative history. It reads as stated, established effective June 1, 1871, by an act of February 21st, 1871, that's 16 Stat 419, abolishing the corporations of the city of Washington, D.C. and Georgetown, D.C., and the levy court of Washington County, D.C., and replacing them with a municipal corporation known as the District of Columbia. For those that don't understand the District of Columbia, our founders in 1790, through the Residence Act, wanted a jurisdiction or a place to hold the capital for government business. And they needed to have a corporation for the government in order to do business. And it was very small. And it was enacted in 1801. There was a minor amendment done in 1803. There was no reason to replace that government. So the de facto was caught. We know for certain, it's in our government journals, it's in the records, that there was something fishy that went on in 1871. And also in the Civil War, they fomented that. These secret society players that infiltrated our country and fomented that war, and things that had happened. I don't want to go on too long about that. We cover it well in the books. But Lincoln had to operate because we lost the quorum of Congress. When the southern states, their congressmen walked out of Congress, we did not have a quorum. We had a rump Congress. And so enactments couldn't be done, legislation couldn't be done, and Lincoln was forced to operate out of the executive government. And he was very transparent when he did speak before the Congress on how he stayed within the bounds of the Constitution and the things that he did. And there is every reason to believe that he intended to return it back from the executive government to the Republic, but they murdered him before he could do that. So we see steps, and we went through government journals and congressional journals, executive journals. I read through all of the presidential proclamations, through the executive orders, which weren't much of anything except death announcements until the Civil War, when Lincoln used the executive side. And we have it accounted for. We know what they did. We know how they did it. They were methodical. They moved in steps through the latter part of the 1800s and the Gilded Age, and then going into the Progressive Era, when they became very progressive about takeover. And we lost our republic. It was buried. So that's our story there. So to make it known that there are established two governments on this land, and what was done with the re-inhabited republic, the Republic for the United States of America, is they followed the law. They followed the law of nations, which is also very important. And notice was served where it needed to be overseas and so forth. So all the principals were advised, hey, we re-inhabited this. Bill, how am I doing there? Am I covering it pretty well? Okay. Another thing that I want to bring is that what these dark characters had done in putting the American Republic into dormancy and going forward with this municipal corporation of the District of Columbia is they tricked people into another jurisdiction. So we have two jurisdictions on this land. And a jurisdiction, juris means law in Latin, dictio means to pronounce. And a jurisdiction is a body politic or a body of people where there is lawful power of authority of doing justice in cases of complaint and distributing justice. So the power of governing or legislating, there has to be a jurisdiction for a community of people, for a commonwealth of people to get along and live together. And the jurisdiction that the corporation has, they managed to do it through the birth certificate. They were very tricky what they did. They did not give full notice. They did not give notice to the people that they were going forward with another government either. So everything that they've done is by law null and void. But they tricked the people into the jurisdiction of the corporation and called them U.S. citizens.
Breaking up a bit. Okay. You're breaking up just a little bit.
Okay.
Which doesn't surprise me. I think we do have censors that are in, that watch this broadcast.
Yes.
I think we're okay now. I think
Okay.
let's see where it goes from here. But this is all fascinating and brilliant. And you're talking about maritime law. Am I
Yes.
right about?
Yeah.
That they installed this illicit structure called maritime law, which has nothing to
Yes.
do with us.
No, that's Uniform Commercial Code. That commercial money. It's all about money for them, money and power. Yes, sir.
And somehow, I guess because it looks so official, we've all fallen for it.
Oh, yeah.
But the truth is that we are completely sovereign, and we, in essence, I mean, in truth, we operate under divine law, which
Yes.
is represented by the Constitution and the Republic. But they've tricked us. Most of humanity has no idea that they're essentially being held captive by a foreign influence, and this, what you're speaking of. I mean, I don't know if I feel humbled to even try to interpret this, but essentially we are coming into reclaiming our power, and as Bill was talking about, over the land. This is building on the land. We're not building on the swamp. We're not building on the ocean, right? That's
Right.
what they wanted us to believe. So you have really traced the roots and the history of this
Mhm.
illicit structure that's taken over every aspect of our life, like the Wizard of Oz type of thing. It's just fascinating. I mean, I'm sorry I interrupted. It was just that we couldn't hear you for a second, but this is fascinating. What you're saying is amazing.
It's such a tremendous story when we learn the truth and we can finally understand, because those of us where sensories are maybe more acute, we knew something was wrong. We could almost even smell it, but we couldn't quite put our finger on what's wrong. And we can sure feel it today. I mean, it's ugly. We see the players, they're exposed. The light is growing brighter because the Creator, he says it's time. And we're promised that even in Isaiah and Daniel, that the government is on the Messiah's shoulders, and in the last days it would be raised up. And the earth is certainly groaning for the manifestations of the sons and daughters of God. So it's time for the people of God to rise up. This was absolutely a jurisdiction that our founding fathers, the Pilgrims and the Puritans, and going forward to the founding fathers, that they wanted. And back in that day, 98 to 99% of the people on the continent were Christian. It's certainly lessened since then, but we've been propagandized as a people. We've been indoctrinated as a people. They got in our education system and started taking out the biblical principles. I'm not talking about denomination doctrines, just principles that are universal. Moral law, God's moral law, so that we can interface with each other. There's a correct behavior that we should have, and it would be a public virtue. So that's the only way to have liberty, and our founding fathers said it. In order to have liberty, we have to have a moral people. It has to be a virtuous people. So we need divine intervention in order for that to happen. But I'm watching it happen. I've been out in social media since July of 2018. Back, I was kind of pushed out there to represent the books, and I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't want to do it because I knew I was going to lose a whole bunch of family and friends. But I did. And then there was this announcement of, we need digital soldiers. We need to and I thought, I can do that. And I've watched thousands of people wake up. Some even led them to Christ, which has been such a privilege. So now there's so many digital soldiers around me, and we'll capture bombs and bullets in one area, and then we share it in other social media. So we see, what's the best advertising? Word of mouth. And that's what I'm doing. That's our fourth book that Bill is holding up, and that's called God's Solution for America and the Nations of the World. This is a spiritual revolution. That was my husband's lead on that book, and that's probably a more refined and polished work of the two volumes. It gets more into the nitty-gritty of the who, what, where, when, why, and how do we return the nation back to God,
Amazing.
back to the Creator.
Many years ago, when I was, what was that? The bathtub? Many years ago, when I was practicing Hasidic Judaism in Brooklyn, New York, I would go every morning at like some ungodly hour, like 5 a.m, to listen to a very learned, wonderful, just rabbi, and yeah, I had connections to him. That's because of something his son had said to me. His son was sent, anyway, it's a long story, but he once, in the middle of a Hasidic discourse, he just looked up and he said, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, these are divine ordinances. These are divinely inspired. And I was really surprised at that point in my life to hear that. But this is where we need to return to, and it's not a big return because we're there naturally. It really, in my mind, it just means getting rid of all the artificial blockages that this the deep state and the parasites who put upon us to destabilize us and to disempower us from our natural birthright, which is a very complex soul structure that we have that the parasites do not have, and they are very interested in neutering us and neutralizing us so that we cannot rise up as we are doing, but nothing can stop what's coming. That's what I would say.
Nothing can stop what's coming. And this isn't just about the United States of America. This is about the world. And we have a very important calling in America. We have to learn our national identity, and we do that through education, through the books, our truthful history. That's how we do this, so that we can put it together and understand. So our national identity, and then to come to understand, we have a prophetic destiny. There's a calling on the United States of America to help the other nations of the world. The founding fathers understood that. I used to wonder, why did they refer to this as the model government? But I understand now. It's because they knew that the other nations of the world, like the scriptures say, the nations of the world will become the nations of our Lord. They will want to live in the jurisdiction of liberty too. And so what our founders put together was that very means, how to run the government, what it is, and so forth. So the United States of America has a great responsibility. We're the greatest, or have been the greatest nation on the earth. Why is that? Well, in early America, it was referred to as a city upon a hill and a light to the nations. It's because the gospel was carried, and the gospel needs to spread. And the founding fathers certainly understood that, and they knew a day would come. They also knew that they knew the book of Revelation. They learned to read from the Bible. They knew, most of them knew the Hebrew and Greek languages, Latin. They understood the scriptures real well. In one of the universities, John Quincy Adams had gone to it. I think that was Harvard. They were required to translate the Bible from one language to the other. They knew the scriptures. They knew what was coming, and to read their writings, it's wonderful. And another thing where people have asked, what's going to happen to us? America's not in the Bible. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The sermons from the 1600s, 1700s, it's all in there. The patriot preachers, they knew who we were. It just wasn't called America, but they knew that we had a place, and it's our responsibility. So the greater is the servant. We need to serve the other nations by helping them to gain liberty too. And liberty is different from freedom. So many people use the word freedom, but liberty is more. Liberty is freedom and morality, and it comes with responsibility.
Responsibility.
Like George Washington said in his farewell address after 2 terms as president, to the American people. If you would print it out, it'd be about 12 pages and maybe an 11-point font. School children were required to memorize it. Went up before World War II. But he said, your name is American, and that he called it the sacred fires of liberty. So it's up to us to maintain it. But we better learn what it is first so that we can maintain it.
Gene, it's interesting that you talked about the earth yearning and crying out. And just yesterday or Tuesday on the training call that Sandy Mariki does, we had a live caller that was Britain from England that was very interested in the Republic and taking the word out. Now, that's
Awesome.
news to a lot of people. But, you and I know that that's been in the process now with other countries for a number of years. And in fact, Germany in many ways is even ahead of us in certain ways. And this all ties back in together with, what's in the future, and that's how the Tsar and the Gasaris played out. That's how so much comes into end time prophecy. And if you look at the book of Deuteronomy, and people are called by my name will humble themselves and repent and turn from their evil ways, I'll heal their land. Well, covenants are forever. And
That's
so
right.
as we continue to be a light to a dark world, both in the Jewish community and in the Christian community, the benefits spread to the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is crying out and looking for that to happen. And so really, I look at the prophecy and I see that there's a pale rider. I saw the pale rider at the Olympics in Europe. And before that, they had just mocked my Lord at the supper, at the Last Supper. And I thought, well, there goes a third of humanity. And so as we see this thing play out, and more comes into focus that we are living in biblical times. And I like what Paul wrote: work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And I love the fact you brought in your fourth book, God's Solution for America and the World, because that truly is the target. And I yield back to you.
I want to bring up the point too that we had gifted our books, the Re-inhabited books, to the Republic, and ultimately to the American people. David and I felt like we just did our part, and there were many other participants that did their part. We've all done our homework, and this was a means to be able to pay for the website and pay for the emails and so forth. And also book orders are coming in from overseas, from Germany, from Australia, from all different areas. Though people of the nations of the world, they know before the American people know that if we don't get our act together, they aren't going to make it. I watched for years the annual prayers that the Australians did for America, and I would listen to the leader of that. He knew our history better than the American people know, and they would just plead on our behalf. Look at the hell on earth those folks have been through over there, and the economy that they endure, and in the UK, the people they're going through a hell on earth. Well, this corporate democracy that's run by the devil's children, they want to knock us off. They're poisoning us. They're doing bad things, and the other countries have been experiencing it for a long time, and we're waking up to smell the coffee now finally to get what they've been telling us about or crying out about. So it's our turn. It's our turn. And I want to exhort the American people. I know that there are some of you that are listening that are feeling something stirring in there. And you're feeling like, yep, this is a God thing. And what can I do? What you can do is check in and check in for your state and see what office positions you can fill. God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. If he calls you, you step forward and you learn. This is a process where we learn on the job. And you've got a responsibility. And there's also been a call for those that are veterans. They understand their oath to the Constitution, and they take it seriously. That oath never goes. That oath like a covenant. And come forward. Check in, see where you can do your part and spread the word.
Very, very good. And I want to share a couple things that came to my mind right as you were saying that, and that is, where goes America goes the rest of the world, because we were the light, are the light on the shining hill, and the ultimate mountains to try to overtake. So that behooves all of us to be involved in order to do that. There's another saying that goes, where we go one, we go all. And people know where that's connected to, I think. But one thing I think from what you've said, everybody, and Governor Carpenter, and this is from a book in chapter 1 that I am reading now from a very faith-based individual, veteran. And it's in the title of it in the chapter 1 is, Here's Your Good Sign. And it's Romans 8:28. And we know all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. We are all called. The only question that you have is whether or not you're going to answer the call. The call to duty, the call to liberty. These are things that God put in motion. Are you going to get on your board and ride with them, or are you going to try to go upstream? So I encourage all the listeners and the folks who this resonates with to become involved, because it is our apathy that has got us to the point where we're at. The new republic, the re-inhabited republic, what we're trying to do, and we are doing it, is going to require every citizen to play a part, an active part, in the governance at their local levels, at the state level, and minimally at the federal level. So I would encourage everybody to get on board, visit the site that's flying below you on the screen, and at minimum, become an elector and watch some of the videos, read some of the articles, get in touch, like Gene said, with your state, because there's some representatives in each of your states. And you do the links, just follow the information and become one with God in this grand adventure that continues from what he began in this covenant. I yield.
Excellent, Bill. I want to tag along with you on that and say, regardless of what your eschatology is, your study of end times or your beliefs, Jesus, Yeshua, said, occupy until I come. So we have a responsibility in that. I yield.
You're
Oh.
muted, Elliot. There you go.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
it's very
I'll take it
interesting.
even further back.
I feel like I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
I'll take it even further back than that, Gene. Take it back to Genesis. And what does Genesis say? Same thing. Take dominion over. Occupy until I come.
Mm-hmm.
And have a faith of a mustard seed and stand. And that's what
That's
we've
right.
done all these years. And, back in the day that we were talking about in the old days, it wasn't a fledgling republic like it is today. It was 10, 20 times this size. Easy. Of active participants in committees, working day and night. And it got down to a remnant.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to rebuild from there. But we're still in the game. And we're winning. And you see it every day in the news. And praise the Lord. What a great time to be alive. And everybody's responsible for their own destiny. And that's what the Republic's about. This is your destiny. You own it. You're a 14-year-old playing video games, and here's the keys to Daddy's Ferrari. You want to go take driver's ed? Here we are. Sign up. That's my pitch. I yield.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's exquisite and very exciting to get to meet with you guys. I mean, I feel like I'm in my old community, my old religious community. It's a very similar, the same kinds of ideas, the same principles, work throughout, Judaism, Christianity. I don't know that much about Islam. I mean, the part of Islam that they let us see is not a good thing, and I think it's controlled by the deep state. But there are aspects of all these religions that have been infiltrated by this parasitic, criminal, satanic organization, and the antidote, the cure to all of this is just simple as can be. Just join the Republic, which makes sense. It makes sense that the solution to all our problems, as people try to make it a very complex thing about trying to figure out what is Trump really doing and what's this, and a lot, I've been encouraging my community to step away from this kind of thinking and just allow the light to come in. And this is really the way. This is the way. Just join the Republic. It's so simple. There will be issues that come up in that once you step into that framework, but those are issues that are productive and real. To spend your time thinking about what's really going on, when are the arrests coming, and this kind of thing. All these negative issues, all this blackpilling, all this fear space. This is infiltration from the Satanists, and we need to just step aside from all the fear factor, all the mental gyrations that we've been indoctrinated to receive, and just step out into the light and join the Republic, and let's do it. So I'm just I'm very flattered that you guys would come and inhabit the same thought space as me and my community. But we're come back please come back, every week if you can, or more. I'd love to hear more from Gene just about the things in the book. I'm really, we've been lax and we need to order the book, so we'll be ordering soon. But this is just such an amazing opportunity, and we don't need to figure it out. We just need to just live and just accept the simplicity and the glory really of creation, which is, it's not something that it's not where, in my opinion, we should be spending our time. We can do that. We have the ability to go into many different dimensional realities as humans, that we can spend time thinking about this or that, or doing this or that. But at the end of the day, it seems to me it's as easy. I wrote this song, just leave the matrix, leave that mental state of fear, and it's really kind of an ego-based fear, because it implies that you have the ability to figure this out, which is a trap in itself. And just allow your heart to. I had a teacher, a friend of mine, not like a formal teacher, but he said, think with your heart and dance with your mind. That once you allow in the light, Danielle and I, we don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's really going on, even though we lead a community that is very interested in what's really going on. What's really going on, everything is going right here and right in your heart. So it's just a matter of waking up to really divine rule, divine inspiration, creation, taking part in productive things, in creating a life that suits you and exudes the kind of love and light that is really our birthright. It's not in the birth certificate. It's not about becoming a slave to this corporation. It's about freeing ourselves once and for all to really enjoy the fruits and bounty of this incredible planet, or whatever it is. Oh yeah, that was one question I wanted to ask Gene. What is your take on, in my community, we've learned a lot about this idea of Tartaria, and certainly I just came back from an older city. They have all these buildings that they do not make sense. What is your take on that aspect of history?
I haven't gone down that pathway a lot, although I follow folks in social media that have shared some clips, and I'm astounded. I have to share. I worked a lot of years in downtown Chicago, and when I would take the train in, there was this beautiful train station, LaSalle Street Station, and there were other train stations in Chicago. They were beautiful pillars that were so huge, and I used to look at them and say, how did they ever erect those? Well, in the 80s, they demolished all of that. And I was heartsick. I thought their excuse was they didn't want street people, crashing. And I thought that's inhumane. They could be warm inside those buildings, at least. But now I understand why. They were erasing our history. And to understand that the bells ring off a frequency that heals, to look at some of the design on the buildings and to see how intricate they are. At some point, I am going to do a dig on that, because it's fascinating.
Well, thanks so much. And again, let's do this. Do this often, man. I mean, that's what I was trying to express to the Republic community, that we just need to be out there all the time. That's my take. I mean, I broadcast 6 days a week. I've been doing it for 10 years. I've had a zillion channels taken down. They don't allow me to make a living. It doesn't matter to me. So anytime you guys want to hop on and just share some of the incredible revelations and just positive energy that you guys exude, we'll be doing. We'll just continue to do this every Thursday. But I salute you all and thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of mind space with you.
Well, Ellie, thank you for hosting and being such an energetic and loving soul that you are, because you are being used by God to help get our message out. And also, I just wanted to mention, Gene, I think I'm correct, that you have 2 audio versions, files for the books also.
Yep, there were folks that donated themselves and their voices and would read chapters, and they were put together in files. When you go into the republic4usa.org and sign in, you have option to be able to get either the PDFs of the books. We donated the PDF versions of the books, and also the audio versions of the books for a donation or for free if you want. So yeah, those are available.
So we're just trying to make it really easy for anybody to get informed and take action on that. So, but again, thank you for hosting and helping us to get the history and the works that we're trying to do out to the listening audience. And Godspeed to you.
Oh. Ellie, thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Boy, my heart, it aligns right with yours. We're in it together.
Well, I hope you come back. I hope we can do. I will continue to have the space open every Thursday. So whenever you guys want to come on, let's rock.
Thank you so much. We'd love
Sounds
that.
good. Have a blessed
Thank
rest
you.
of the day.
God bless. Thank you again.
God bless you.
Thank you, Ellie. God bless everyone.
God bless.